Welcome to Beyond Bosch. I'm your host, Jessica Dahl. Today we have a special two-part episode, so make sure you stick around for the whole thing. We're talking all about winter test. And joining me first, I have Steve Sancricca. He is an engineering manager at our winter test facility, and he has 24 years of winter test experience. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for being here, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we barely, obviously I didn't even really share what you do. I'd love to hear a little bit more, let the audience know who you are, what you do at Bosch.
Okay, so I've been at Bosch since the year 2000, so 24 years now, mostly in applications and various team lead roles in applications, and then promoted to an engineering manager. So basically what my group does is we take the specifications from the customer and then tune the systems, whatever system is purchased by the customer, the chassis controls, brake systems, and we calibrate to meet the customer performance expectations and as well as Bosch internal expectations.
Okay. And so specifically when you're talking winter testing, what is that time frame usually look like?
The time frame of winter test usually starts in December. We go up the first week of December all the way through the end of February.
Okay.
But some projects may need to go to Alaska earlier, so sometimes we'll start at the beginning of November.
Oh, wow.
For the Alaska test trips. And then if program timing doesn't work out, there's sometimes the requirement to go to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
So we actually do testing in New Zealand from late July to early August.
Okay.
And that's usually in rare cases. Of course, it's very expensive to send vehicles and equipment there. So
Sure. Wow. So
we try to avoid that, and the customers try to avoid it as much as possible.
I'm sure. So many things out of your control, though, obviously, with like the weather,
Yeah, exactly.
For instance, this year, I know we had a pretty mild winter.
Yes, extremely mild.
How did that affect you guys?
But like I said, I've been going to winter test in Baudette for 24 years, and this was the most challenging winter I think we've ever faced. Lots of very long spells of warm weather, very uncharacteristic for northern Minnesota. So we had days where the test tracks were closed down for days in a row. I mean, in the past we've had periods where there might be 1 or 2 days where the tracks are closed due to like warm sunny day or something. But now this past winter was very challenging. So to kind of compensate for that, of course, when we're at winter test, we work 7 days a week throughout winter test.
Because it's such a condensed time,
Yes, very condensed time. The trips are usually limited to about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Some people will extend to 3 weeks, but usually you're a little loopy by the time you get out of there after 3 weeks of winter tests. But this past year, we had to compensate by the engineers getting up and getting on the track by 3 a.m., working until the sun comes up, throughout the weekend and so forth. And then we actually had to schedule additional trips to Alaska after our winter test facility closed in Baudette throughout March. So some
to finish working.
To finish the validation work and the tuning and validation work that we weren't able to complete due to the weather.
Wow. That's a lot. So how do you even pivot from there? Do you rent a facility in Alaska?
Yep. There's a military base in Alaska that rents to various customers and suppliers that we can rent track time at. And of course, it wasn't just Baudette that lost the weather this winter. It was all the test tracks in northern Michigan. And as a result, it was very difficult to book the time in Alaska at that particular test facility.
Sure. Everyone was flocking
everyone was kind of...
Wow. Okay. So when you are at winter test, obviously you're constantly problem solving, troubleshooting. What is your main objective in that condensed season, that time? You said you work validating, and what was the other part of it?
Tuning.
Tuning, okay.
So those are the two primary activities. So we tune the system to meet the customer and Bosch internal performance requirements. And then after the tuning effort is done, we usually have what we call a joint test with the customer,
Okay.
and then receive buy-off of performance from the customer. And then once that happens, then we begin the validation phase, where we run a lot of different test maneuvers in the vehicles on the various winter test surfaces.
Okay, okay. So I've got to imagine you all can't just be working the whole time you're there. You need to blow off some steam. What is something you guys do for fun? Or
Yeah,
all
that's
of
a
you?
great question. So what Bosch does for the application engineers and other people working up there is they schedule time at the local ice rink, and so everyone gets together and play hockey. And we actually have the customers come and join us sometimes
Oh,
when they're there
That's cool.
for joint tests. So we do that. So typical work day is from like 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. So
Okay.
a 12-hour day, and break up that day by playing hockey at lunchtime, and everyone gets together and kind of a very playful game that they'll have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
No, I broke my leg back in 2002 playing hockey up in Minnesota, so I don't play anymore.
That was it.
But they also have like a little workout room in one of the facilities up there, and then
Okay.
we also have the ability to use one of the local hotels. There's a gym, and there's a gym at the local high school too.
Oh, nice.
That they allow us to go there. There's also swimming. You can use the pools in the morning, I think 3 days a week.
That's nice. So I imagine, is Bosch pretty well known in Baudette?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're a huge community supporter. So.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of end with, what's your favorite part of winter test?
Just driving the cars on the ice and the snow. It's just so
Yeah.
much fun. It's
Yeah.
the coolest job in the automotive industry.
See, I love it. You can see it on your face. You're like, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
so
I
cool.
try to share that enthusiasm with the people that work for me, and I think I can probably say all the people in my group love it as much as I did.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your, very small window of time that you're not winter testing, right?
Yeah,
and sharing with us, and we really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
to those listening, stay tuned. We have a special guest coming on next, and we're going to go from changing times to time zones.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Bosch. Don't forget to hit subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. And now we have Brian Greene, who is a vehicle motion application manager for West Coast customers, if I'm right.
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we just had Steve on, who's a veteran, 24 years at Winter Test. How about you? How long have you been at Bosch and at Winter Test?
I too have been around for 24 winter tests. I started my career at Continental Automotive and then switched to Bosch this will be 16 years now.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's taking a step back. What do you do at Bosch? I know I just kind of said your title, if you will, but what do you do at Bosch and at Winter Test?
So I started an application and did about 10 years as a technical project manager, and now I'm like you said, the manager for applications at the West Coast team. So our group primarily is the guys and gals in the vehicle, testing the vehicles, calibrating the vehicles, working with the customers, working with the other teams within Bosch, software, hardware, to make sure the vehicle operates as it should.
Sure.
In the end.
Sure. Okay. So I want to hear from you, what is the importance? From what I understand, winter test is a condensed time. It's a very critical time to do testing on winter surfaces, obviously. What does your team try to accomplish during that time?
So as you might have seen personally, maybe if you've experienced one of our safety systems, a lot of times those happen in the winter months when it's snowy, icy, and that's a big part of the safety systems. And obviously winter around here and in most of the country is only a few months of the year, so we have almost half of the work to do in just a few months. So that's the main challenge that that forces all the other challenges around it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you go to winter test to basically, calibrate and practice and test these systems in like the most challenging conditions, I guess, that you can create, right?
Yep.
So what happens when the weather doesn't cooperate like this past winter?
Yeah, so there is quite a few test facilities in the Midwest region. There's quite a few in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's a few in northern Minnesota, and there's one in Alaska. There's a few others in Canada around, but we had some of the worst conditions for winter testing that we've had that I can ever remember this past year. And it wasn't just in northern Minnesota at our main test track. It was also in the UP. It was also in Alaska. So we really had to be adaptable in our testing, and you can imagine that's not easy. We have a whole crew of people. We have vehicles. We may have, depending on the project, up to a dozen vehicles.
Wow.
At different configurations. We have our test equipment. We have tires. We have brakes. We have all kinds of backup parts and all that. If we decide we have to move because the weather's too bad, we then have to get to all that stuff to another facility and plan accordingly, right?
Right. So is that what happened this year?
Yeah, there was. December it usually starts December through February.
Okay.
And we ended up canceling a lot of our trips in December because there was just no snow.
Yeah.
It was grass up there, which this was the first time for me going up in December and seeing just dead grass field where I've never seen grass there before. It's always been snow and ice. So a lot of December was a wash. And even December wasn't too bad. We made do, and the track support team did a great job doing what they could with what they had.
Sure.
And then about halfway through February, we decided this just isn't working. We shifted most of our team to Alaska. Even that was very iffy,
sure.
But it was a little better than Baudette was at the time. So we shifted all the cars, all the people, all the cars, all the resources up to Alaska.
How do you do that? I mean, that sounds like a lot of coordinating.
Yeah, it's many meetings, I feel bad for the coordinators of all the travel this year because there's a lot of changes, and a lot of times on short notice.
Sure.
As well.
I keep thinking of that popular saying on Friends, where Ross is like, pivot, and they're like trying to take at least that's me. But that sounds intense to have to move not just people, but vehicles. And I'm sure the track, everyone was in high demand, right? If it's bad everywhere. So that's incredible. And what was something, or what is something that you just absolutely love about winter test?
One of the biggest things, first thing that comes to mind is the camaraderie you get from just being with your team. You're often, because the time is so condensed, we're often working 12-hour days, 10 to 12-hour days, 7 days a week. Oof. Like we need to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time with your colleagues. And in the evening, I mean, it's a town of, I looked it up the other day, it's just under 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So not a big town, there's not a lot to do.
Sure.
So you often spend evenings with your colleagues as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a challenge, but it's also good. It really makes you more of a family. You get to see each other's strengths and weaknesses and all the good stuff that comes with it, but you really come out of it stronger as a team in the end.
Yeah, those things, I feel like when you're in the trenches like that with others, that's when really that teamwork and that bond is formed. That's cool. So, I mean, really, this is just incredible to me, the work that you all do. I think so often we take for granted, those who are just regular drivers like me, the amount of effort and, forethought that goes into and planning and pivoting when weather doesn't work well, that goes into keeping us safer on the road, Yeah. That's amazing. So that
Yeah.
has to feel good, kind of as
Yeah.
part of your job, like that you're able to do that and accomplish that for others.
Yeah, I often tell my kids, because the vehicles we drive are Bosch, have Bosch systems in them, and if we do a traction control event, I can tell my kids like, yeah, so and so, tuned that
Oh,
for
that's
us.
cool.
So it does give you a good feeling when you see cars going down the road,
Yeah.
and you had a hand in that, the safety of that vehicle, and
Yeah.
the family in that car.
For sure. Are your kids old enough to drive?
Yes, I have a 16-year-old and twin 15-year-old, so we're going through all of that right now.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's adding some gray hairs as we speak.
It happens fast. It happens fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that has to feel good too, like knowing you're doing a part in keeping them safer too as they head
Yes.
out.
Yes, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and all that you do. And for those watching and listening, we'll see you next time.